and on throughout your years. What are the emotions, the feelings after you win last night?
Um, yeah, pretty down. Obviously, just it's a tough thing to go through. We had such a great regular season, and to kind of come up short in the postseason is it hurts. But it's just a great group of guys out here, and very supportive. We're talking all we were all in the locker room for a long time last night just talking. So um, it sucks, but yeah, we were a little down, but great group of guys bounce back.
You mentioned those conversations, and can you give us what you can just about what those conversations are like with your guys after that?
Just a lot about what we accomplished this season, what we did, the foundation that we had, we put in place, and um, we know we came up a little short this year, but I think overall a lot of it was just positivity, picking each other up, just being good teammates, and realizing the foundation that's set in place, and the jump we need to make to get to the next place.
And
Why do you think the regular season success that you guys had didn't translate to the series against Indiana?
Um, Not sure. The way they play, they're like the fastest paced team in the NBA, and um, they're a really good team. You gotta give them credit. They stepped out there physical. They got into passing lanes, disrupted us on offense, and then um, offensively they were just out in transition, free flowing, and we didn't do a good enough job, getting them off their spots, and being aggressive on the defensive end, and they took advantage. They shot really well as well. That helps, but they're a good team. It just maybe some lapses here and there, but we just you know didn't do what we needed to do.
Do you think that you guys are now in a position where nothing you do in the regular season is going to matter until you have postseason success?
Yeah, to an extent, I think so. Obviously, you want to have a good regular season. You want to have this, but at the end of the day, um, everyone gets judged on what they do in the postseason. So, having a great regular season helps. It goes a long ways, but most important thing is postseason.
Do you think that's fair?
Uh, to an extent, I think so. We had a lot of successes. This regular season was amazing. We had a great season. But nobody's going to remember that with what just happened to us in the postseason. We just got to get over that hump, and we will. Just tough right now.
Don's talked all year long about your ability to bounce back as a team, just losing streaks, runs in a game. How do you expect this team to respond after what just happened?
I think with what just happened. I think we're all going to come back. I think this offseason is going to be big for us. Everyone's going to be highly motivated, work their tails off, and become back better version of themselves. And I think that's going to go a long ways. I think when this team gets back together, at the beginning of next season, it's going to be the same team, but just another step, another level to it. And um, I think, yeah, the biggest thing we can take out of this is just the motivation, and just right back to work. Really, we were talking in the locker room last night. Take your time to let your body heal. And Don was talking, let this eat away at you, and wake up every morning, and use it as fuel.
Dean, what is going to be required for you guys to take that next step?
Just another step from everybody. I think we had obviously a great year. I said it before, but um, there's just small things everyone needs to do. We just talk about everyone, just if they get a little better, how much better the team could be. But I think a lot of it, we had some vets been through some things. I think a lot of just is mental warfare at this time. Just learning the game, learning what these teams do to be successful, and kind of taking it, stealing it from them, and using it our own way. And so I think a lot of this, taking a step and everything is a mental step for everyone. I think that's going to go a long ways.
When you immediately reflect back on the series, why do you think you lost it?
I think we just didn't shoot the ball as well as we normally have. Got to give them credit on their defense was great. They're flying around, um, and we just I think we had a couple games where we brought the intensity, especially we bring the intensity, played really well for 40 minutes, 38 minutes a game, and then we kind of lapsed, and then they took advantage, and that's what winning teams do. They do it for longer than the other team, and that's what they did. They kind of absorbed the punches we were throwing, and just kind of stayed in the fight. And then whenever we got tired, they just kind of took over.
Throughout the course of the year, you guys talked about being a defense first team, and you took so much pride on that on the floor. And there were 8 teams that made the conference semifinals, and at the end of it, you guys are last in defense. How does that sit with you, and what kept you guys from being the defensive team that you thought you could be?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sit well with us, with the defensive pieces we have. We definitely should have been, higher. I think a lot of it, I mean, the Pace is such a good offensive team. They just get out in transition, put you in tough situations, and I think that was the biggest thing. We just, had some lapses here and there, and they just kind of picked us off. And but yeah, we got to be better on the defensive end going forward. Just, we'll get better at just tough one this year.
And Dean, you mentioned the mental part of it. A lot of guys last night and today talked about the mental toughness in an area again to take a step forward. How much of that can be learned versus have it already done?
I think most of it can be learned. Going through tough times like this, tough series is a way to build um, your mental toughness, and then I think just knowing what to expect, going to the playoffs, in the future with this under our belt's going to help us a bunch. But I think most of it can be learned, or I think more taught than learned. You don't want to have to go through things like this, but going through things like this can be a positive, and your mental toughness can jump you to the next step.
And what did this series teach you guys in that regard?
Just be consistent. Like the Pacers were so consistent with the way they attacked, and through the whole thing, I think we were a little up and down at times. We're playing great, and we've had some lulls. I think they just stayed pretty even keeled through the whole game, and mentally they knew if they could just sustain longer, they'd get us at the end, and it happened. I think that's the thing we can learn is just, man, you just got to do it longer than the other guys, and absorb the punches, take the blows, and just stay in the fight, and they did a great job.
Yeah, last question. We talked so much about the hunger of the Pacers in this series. Don mentioned that Boston, when they won the championship, the level of hunger they had. How can getting this close and seeing your goals right in front of you and having the season end abruptly, like was said, elevate your guys' level of hunger?
I think it's the only way to really grow your hunger is to have failure like this. We were right there. We didn't play our best basketball when we needed to, and I know it's going to eat away at everyone. It's eating away at me. I know a lot of those guys, like a lot of my teammates, didn't sleep last night. Had rough nights, and it's something you can learn from. The way they did it, but I think overall it's just like you got to play with that urgency. You got to just really be locked in every game. And failure is part of the game, and it's part of like the growing process. And I think we'll be back better than ever.